In this episode of Dentside Depot, we are going to deal with an all too common issue with Dentside Ford trucks, and that is fixing roof, drip rail, metal, rust. So definitely stay tuned. This is going to be an instructional video specifically on how to fix this on these trucks. Not a welding video, but an instructional video for this. So let's see how we do this. Okay, and the truck that we're going to be making this repair on today is our Cummins swap super cab that we have been working on that is getting very close to being done. And this is one of the final steps that we have to do in order to complete this truck. And the first step that you need to make in doing this repair is evaluating the cab that you have and making a decision on whether or not this repair is worth it on the cab that you have. Now, the first thing that I would do before digging into the drip rails is look at the rest of the cab as a whole. In this instance, we have probably I'd give it a B+ cab. It needed a little bit of work, but overall it was pretty good. Actually needed no floor work whatsoever, so that was really good. Back, it did have a couple spots along the back seam. Actually need to make one more repair in this seam. I'm probably not going to do it right now. It had a couple spots in the back here, but really overall this truck was very solid. But overall this truck is pretty good. I mean, it's not great, but it's pretty good. Our drip rails on this side are pretty decent. I'm going to need to make a little repair right here, but that won't take very long. But generally speaking, this side is very good. You can now see where the issues come about. We have the factory Ford seam right here, which really was not done well from the factory. And coming down our drip rail, you can see we have a significant separation and rust of the drip rail right here, which is not good. Coming to the front, we have rust. This part of the drip rail the middle drip rail has been cut out, and then we have some significant rust on the front edge. So, and there's been a previous repair, which you can see right here, that was really not done properly. Here's the two ways that you can fix this. You really have two options. Now, there's something that you need to be aware of, and that is the regular cab, crew cab, and super cab trucks do not all share the same drip rail material. They are different, and I'm talking about the roof skin specifically. So here we have a replacement aftermarket top roof skin drip rail piece, and here we have a factory super cab roof. Now, do you see the difference between the two? Look closely. Okay, and there's the aftermarket one. Now, this piece right here is intended for regular cab and crew cab trucks. It has no lip right here. It's perfectly flat. But if you look at the super cab truck, look, we have this little divot right here. And this divot goes all the way down, and that differs from the regular cab and the super cab trucks. Now, this piece will work. It just won't be technically correct for a super cab. So that is something you need to take in consideration. Okay, now I am in the fortunate position of having a donor super cab roof that I was able to use. So I've already cut this off. So I can either use this piece to put in, or I can go with a nice new piece of metal, which is also a possibility, okay? And I'm most likely gonna go with a factory piece because I also need front edge for the windshield as well, because that is also rusted out in this truck. So it makes sense for me to use this piece and weld it all in as one single piece. So again, this is going to be an instructional video on how to do this. I'm not showing you how to weld. This is just to show you how this all works. So the first step that I need to do is I need to do this same process that you see right here on my truck that I'm repairing. I need to separate the drip rail. It's going to be easier on that truck because it's already rusted away. So I think it's just going to essentially just fall apart. Now, another thing you need to think about is before you cut the top part, look, this is not going to sit down all the way without the drip rail, the top drip rail piece removed. So what I'm going to do on my project truck is I'm going to cut it right here well below the final cut mark and remove the drip rail top section right here, so that way I can put my piece in as a template and trace where I want to do my final cut. And even then I'll probably cut it short and then cut it again, because I'm looking for about a 1/16 of an inch gap all the way down to make my welding as easy as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that initial cut and removal on the project truck, and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, so I have the drip rail all cut out here and a little bit of the front of the cab, and we have some good news. All of the metal here in the back is extremely solid. There's absolutely zero reason to cut this back section out. There's just a little spot right here that I'm just gonna have to weld in a little piece and then fill it with seam sealer, obviously. Now, you have the cab underneath, you have the roof on top, and then in between, that is where the drip rail is. And this is replacement drip rail metal. And you can see it just sticks right here. And it goes all the way up to the front post and extends into the front post just a little bit like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill out the holes. I'm going to screw it into the cab, and then I'm going to spot weld it in a couple spots. And before I weld it in all the way, the rest of the spot welds, I'm just going to make sure that my metal that I cut is going to fit nicely and that is nice and even. And once I have that fitting nice, then I will do finish welding on this piece and then finish welding on, or weld in the next piece. So I will get this piece in, and then I will show you what that looks like before moving on to the rest of the roof. Okay, and I have completed my drip rail repair, and you can see the repair panel is in here right now. We have some nice hot penetrating welds going down the side, holding it in. You can see I just used 3 screws to hold it together, and that's right where it should section off at the end. I have my OE patch panel ready to go. I'm not totally confident that the metal is going to be thick enough to weld, so I might have to make a last second change, either using panel bond or potentially going with the replacement new piece. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to start tacking this in now and see how it goes, and then I'll bring you back once it is all done, or very close to being done at least. Okay, and the drip rails are now done on the passenger side. I did not do a perfect job, but I'm pretty darn happy with how it came out. So what I did was I left a 1/16 of an inch gap here, and I zapped it alternating spots all the way down. I had some good welds, I had some that kind of bubbled up a little bit, and I definitely blew through a few times, but that's the way it goes. It looks pretty good. I just got to do the front corner here. I decided to do it in 2 pieces instead of 1. I got to cut this down right here a little bit and tap that down. And instead of lead, I'm just going to weld it in and then grind it down. And you can see I have good penetration, which is really what I was most concerned with on this. I wanted everything to be nice and solid. And you can see we are now definitely good penetration. Okay, and the job is now done. And you can see what we have here. Drip rails look pretty good. I'm not going to say I did the most amazing job of all time with my welding, but it's definitely a very functional weld, a good deep penetrating weld, and this roof is now solid all the way across. Of course, it is going to need a little bit of filler, a skim coat of filler to get the perfect body line back. I obviously sanded it down to get it as straight as I could, but it's never going to be perfect when you're doing this unless you're welder of the year or something like that, but it looks pretty good. Now the important step here is you need to fill the drip rail seam with seam sealer. I'm going to use a high quality 3M seam sealer. And we are officially coming to the very end of wrapping up our drip rail repair. You can see I have the filler in. It still needs a little bit more sanding and then probably a top coat of regular filler on top. So here's the products I used to finish this off. I used Bondo's Extreme Metal Reinforced Filler, and I just did a nice light skim coat here, and I took it all the way down to 400 grit. And it's a very, very thin coat, and I like that product because it's reinforced with aluminum, and it's very strong, and it does not absorb water at all. Now for the drip rails, I filled them in completely, and the product that I used to fill in the drip rails, like they would from the factory, just a different product here, is 3M's panel bonding adhesive. Now there's 2 reasons that I did this. This product is technically used for bonding panels together. But what I did was I got the product down in the seam, and then I cut a Bondo paddle to the size that I wanted, and I just took it down and I pushed it in all the way down so I had a nice, straight, even seam. And the reason I like that is because it gets into the metal in between where the 2 pieces squeeze together, and then you have a nice way for the water to get out, and you're pretty much ensured that there's 0% chance that any water is going to get between those pieces of metal. I also did the same underneath where our new metal bonded underneath here. I ran the same bead of 3M all the way down between because I know that product will adhere and there's no way that's going to come out. And you can see I can rock the whole truck back and forth with the drip rail now. That's how strong it is. I also filled in my cab lights at the top, and that's pretty much it. This is ready now for just a tiny little bit more work, and it's ready to be primed and painted and ready to go. If you enjoyed this episode of Dentside Depot, remember to like and subscribe and keep restoring those classic trucks.